Stop defining yourself. How to truly live Buddhist wisdom. Chapter 1. The Trap of Self-Definition. Why we're not as free as we think. Who are you? That question sounds simple. But the longer you sit with it, the quieter it becomes. Not because there's no answer, but because maybe the answer isn't what we thought. Most people believe they know who they are. I'm a teacher. I'm a daughter. I'm creative. I'm broken. But if we look a little deeper, we might see that what we call self is not something solid. It's something we keep building moment by moment. And that effort to build it can be exhausting. Modern life doesn't give us much space to not be somebody. From an early age, we're taught to define ourselves. What do you want to be when you grow up? Becomes, who are you in this world? And we try to answer it over and over. Through our career, our style, our opinions, our achievements. We wear these as name tags. But behind the name tags, there's a constant pressure. We have to keep checking. Am I doing it right? Do I still matter? Psychologists call this self-referential processing. The brain builds a loop around itself, always watching, always comparing. We end up living not to experience life, but to confirm who we think we are. We're not really free. We're just managing an image. Sometimes it's subtle. A person feels proud of being independent, so they won't ask for help, even when they need it. Another thinks, I'm the funny one, so they keep making jokes even when they're hurting inside. We trap ourselves in roles, and those roles become prisons. From the Buddhist perspective, this is called attachment to self. And this clinging doesn't just limit us, it causes suffering. The Buddha taught, what is not yours, abandon it. Your body, feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness, none of these are yours. He wasn't asking us to reject our human experience. He was pointing to something deeper. He was reminding us that none of these things, our body, our thoughts, our emotions, can truly be held on to. They change. They pass. And when we build a fixed identity on top of something that keeps shifting, we end up confused and hurt. Think about this. Someone believes they're the smart one in their family. It becomes part of who they think they are. Then one day, they fail a test, and the identity starts to crumble. If I'm not smart, then who am I? Another person believes they're successful until they lose their job. Now they don't just feel sad, they feel lost because the label they clung to is gone. We don't suffer simply because things change. We suffer because we believed we were something that was supposed to stay the same. This is the hidden trap. Not just the pain of failure or loss, but the pain of losing who we thought we were. And yet, even when we see this pattern, most of us don't know how to stop. We keep defining ourselves again and again. Not because we're weak or unaware, but because this is how the mind has been trained. The deeper question becomes, why? Why do we keep building and rebuilding a sense of self even when it hurts us? The answer lies in how the mind creates meaning. It lies in how the brain tells stories and how we start to believe those stories as truth. And that's where we turn next. Chapter 2. The Illusion of Self. Psychology and the Mind's Storytelling Habit. You don't have to look far to see how deeply the mind wants to make everything personal. You walk into a room, and someone doesn't smile at you. Suddenly your mind says, "Did I do something wrong?" You scroll through social media, and without meaning to, you compare yourself with everyone. Who's more successful? Who's happier? Who's ahead? These thoughts don't feel like thoughts. They feel like you. But here's something many people don't realize. The sense of me that keeps showing up in our head is not a solid thing. It's a story. And the storyteller? It's the brain itself. Cognitive neuroscience shows that the brain, especially the left hemisphere, acts a bit like a narrator. It takes all the information coming in, sensations, emotions, memories, and tries to explain what's going on. To make sense of the moment, it tells a story, and that story usually begins with I. I'm sad because he ignored me. I'm angry because they don't respect me. I feel anxious because I'm not good enough. But here's the truth. These thoughts might feel accurate, but they're not the full picture. They're just one version of the story your brain is creating. Chris Niebauer, a cognitive scientist, explained this well. He said the brain doesn't like chaos. So when something random happens, the mind adds a narrator to it. I did that. I felt that. I chose that. It's like watching a movie and hearing the voiceover. And then I walked into the room feeling nervous. But you're not the voiceover. You're the whole experience. This storytelling habit isn't a problem by itself. It helps you function. But the trouble starts when you believe the story too tightly. You might believe, I'm always this kind of person. But people change all the time. You might think, that's just who I am. But who we are depends on so many things. Mood, memory, environment, even how much we slept. From a Buddhist point of view, this confusion is called ignorance. It means not seeing things as they really are. The Buddha taught that clinging to a fixed story of self blocks our ability to grow. We become stuck. We get defensive. We suffer when things don't match our idea of who we're supposed to be. The more we hold on to the story, the more narrow our life becomes. There's a better way to understand this. In Buddhism, the self is not a thing you can find. It's a process, always moving, changing, shifting. The Buddha didn't say we don't exist. He said what we think of as me is actually a collection of 5 parts: body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and awareness. These are called the 5 aggregates, and none of them stay the same for even one moment. Just like a river, always flowing. Modern thinkers say something similar. Daniel Dennett, a philosopher of mind, described it as the multiple drafts model. He said there's no central self sitting inside the head, making all the decisions. There are just mental drafts, bits of memory, emotion, impulse, all competing and shifting. So who are we really? There is seeing, but no permanent seer. There is thinking, but no fixed thinker. There is action, but no solid actor behind it. The Visuddhimagga, a classical Buddhist text, puts it beautifully. There is suffering, but no sufferer. There is a path, but no traveler. What does this mean for us in daily life? It means we don't need to spend so much energy defending a story. We can loosen up. We can stop building walls around who we think we are. We can live with more flexibility, more honesty, more presence. Because if the self is just a story, then perhaps what we really are is not the character, but the space in which the story is unfolding. And maybe that space is where true peace begins. Chapter 3. The Misunderstood Truth of Non-Self. What Buddhism Really Means. Many people first encounter the Buddhist teaching of non-self and feel confused or even alarmed. The idea that you have no self sounds like saying you don't exist at all. But that's not what the Buddha meant. He wasn't erasing your humanity. He was freeing it from the trap of being tightly defined. Let's walk through the most common misunderstandings, one by one. First misunderstanding. If there's no self, then I don't exist. This is one of the deepest confusions. When Buddhism says there is no self, it doesn't mean that you vanish. You still have thoughts, memories, feelings, and experiences. You still laugh and cry and love. What Buddhism is pointing to is this: the idea of a fixed, unchanging self, something solid behind the eyes, is an illusion. The Buddha taught that what we call me is actually a flowing process. There's a body, there are feelings, there are perceptions, there are thoughts, there is consciousness, but there is no separate owner behind them. They just arise and pass, like clouds in the sky. You exist, but not as a fixed thing. You exist as a changing, breathing, responsive process. Seeing this clearly doesn't make you disappear. It makes you more alive, because you no longer cling to something you're not. Second misunderstanding. To become free, I have to destroy my ego. Some people hear about non-self and think they must fight or kill their ego. They try to reject their personality, their desires, even their voice. But in doing so, they make the ego even more solid, because they're still obsessed with it. The Buddha didn't tell us to erase anything. He simply asked us to look deeply. See the ego for what it is, a useful mental function, not a fixed identity. You don't need to punish yourself, or suppress your emotions, or act like nothing matters. You only need to stop believing every story your mind tells. A Zen saying puts it well: don't try to get rid of the ego, just don't serve it tea. In other words, don't feed it. Don't make it your master. When you stop trying to be someone, perfect, spiritual, special, you begin to soften. You breathe more. You react less. You start to notice how often the ego speaks and how little peace it brings. Third misunderstanding. If everything is empty, then nothing matters. Some people take the idea of non-self or emptiness and twist it into an excuse. They say, it's all an illusion, so why care? Why take responsibility? But this is not wisdom, it's avoidance. The Buddha never taught us to be careless. He taught us to be clear. When you understand that the self is not a solid thing, you stop clinging. But that doesn't mean you stop caring. On the contrary, you become more awake to life, not less. You feel others' pain more directly. You speak more honestly. You act more mindfully. Not because you're trying to be someone good, but because you see clearly what causes suffering and what brings peace. Letting go of the self isn't about escaping life. It's about being more available to it. It's like loosening a tight fist you didn't know you were making. Suddenly, your hand can hold things gently, or let them go. So the truth of non-self isn't cold. It's not abstract. It's warm. It's human. It frees you, not from responsibility, but from the burden of being a fixed identity. And in that freedom, something soft and powerful opens up inside you, something far more real than any label ever could be. Chapter 4. Living Without Labels. How to be free without losing yourself. Sometimes we hold on so tightly to who we think we are that we don't even notice how tired we've become. We carry names, stories, and judgments like heavy bags we forgot to put down. But there's a quiet power in letting go, not to vanish, but to become more alive. The Buddha didn't ask us to become someone better. He invited us to stop becoming altogether and simply be. That's not a concept. It's an experience. And it begins when we start noticing the subtle ways the mind defines us. You might catch it in small moments. That voice that whispers, "I'm not good at this." Or the one that says, "I always mess things up." These aren't facts. They're mental habits. And like all habits, they can change. The first step is not to argue with them, not to push them away. Just see them. That's it. The thought arises and you observe. You don't fight. You don't follow. You breathe. You smile if you can. And you let it pass, like a cloud in the sky. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh reminded us, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness of your thoughts. That shift from identification to observation is already a kind of freedom. Not dramatic, not loud, but real. And then, something surprising happens. As we stop clinging to who we think we are, we begin to feel more at home. There's a gentle return to what's always been here. The stillness behind the stories. The presence underneath the performance. Meditation is where this becomes clear. You sit. You breathe. And for a few moments, you stop fixing yourself. You stop trying to be anyone. You just feel the body. Hear the breath. Let sounds come and go. And in that space, you're not improving. You're just here. This isn't about escaping the world. It's about resting in it. Psychology calls it self-transcendence, the ability to step beyond your usual sense of self and feel part of something larger. Buddhism calls it nirvana, not a place, but a peace. Not after death, but available now, when we stop grasping. The Buddha taught that peace doesn't come from adding more success, more control, more identity. He taught that peace comes from letting go. And letting go doesn't mean losing everything. It means no longer clinging to what was never really ours. Still, we might wonder, if I stop defining myself, how do I live? Without a role, a story, a strong identity, what guides me? Here's a quiet answer. Intention. You don't need a fixed label to live with purpose. You only need a clear direction. Instead of asking, "Who am I?" try asking, "What am I practicing today?" Are you practicing kindness, patience, honesty, attention? That's not about being someone. It's about living something. And this way of living is not a rejection of identity. It's a softening, a spaciousness, a permission to be more than one thing, to grow, to rest, to change. The Buddha reminded us that we are not nouns. We are verbs, breathing, moving, feeling, choosing, moment to moment. This is not freedom from life, it's freedom in life. It's not always easy, but it's possible. Each time we return to awareness, each time we see a thought without becoming it, we're already walking the path. Not toward perfection, but toward presence, toward clarity, toward peace. Every small act of mindfulness is a step out of the prison of labels. Every breath taken with awareness is a breath taken in freedom. No one can walk this path for you. But the good news is, it's always right beneath your feet.